Well, on September 13th, I will be 6 years sober. I am currently a St. Clair college student. I'm in my second of third year for child and youth care. I plan on going to the university to become a social worker, and I have my own place now. I got honor rolls in my first year, and I work for the school board, and I'm a Brentwood alumni.
Wow. And you're also on the advisory board for the Youth Hub, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I started back up 2 years ago, and it's going strong, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Youth Wellness Hub will do to Windsor.
That's great. So here you are. If I just met you now and heard this story, other than that first part about being 6 years sober, and you are now what is your age now?
I am 23 years old.
Okay. So 23 and 6 years sober.
Yes.
So let's now, and for people who may kind of look at you now and go, after hearing your read off all those amazing things you're doing, they might wonder, how the heck did you get things turned around? So let's go back to maybe where did things start? Because at 16, which means you started doing drugs or alcohol before that.
Yes. So I started vaping actually when I was 11, and it started off with just peer pressure. Me and my cousin, we were just at the same school, and he stole a vape from his parents, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to try it?" And then I said, "Yeah, sure. Like, let's go." And then it spiraled into me starting with vaping. And then I was 12 when I first started smoking weed. And I didn't get really into the harder drugs until I was about 15 years old. I started doing cough syrup, and I just started experimenting in other drugs. And I was doing a lot of criminal activity as well. Like I was selling drugs to people, and I didn't know how any other way to get a job or to get help for myself because I was really struggling.
So 11. Now, the other thing that comes up is that, as a parent, and we've talked about this, so I just want, for anybody listening, we have talked about this, and I think Shayne's parents are even watching and listening, and they're aware of you telling your story. But maybe to give some context so people know, like, were you just, abandoned by your parents? Did they just not?
Yeah, no. So, well, my parents divorced when I was 3 years old, and that hurt me really bad. I started acting up at a very young age. I was around the age of 6 when I got diagnosed with ADHD, and I was causing a disruption in the classroom. I couldn't focus. I was bugging peers. I was starting to get violent with peers, and they approached my mother, and they said, if we don't put Shayne on medication, we're going to have to remove him from school. And so my mom had a really difficult choice to make. She really wanted me to go to a quote unquote normal school. She noticed that I had a lot of friends at that school, and she didn't want me to leave that school. Excuse me. And my dad, on the other hand, did not want me on medication at all. And so when I look at my family dynamic, my mom raised me as a single mother. I had little to no contact with my dad growing up. There was moments where I did have contact with my dad, but it was very inconsistent, and I never seen my dad sober up until I was the age of about 18 years old. My mom is a recovering alcoholic too. My stepdad's a recovering alcoholic. My grandparents are all Brentwood alumni, and so is my dad. And so it really I grew up in an alcoholic home, but my mom tried her best to love and support me with what she knew how to do. I mean, no, it's very hard to raise a child such as myself who is acting up and constantly you just don't know what to do. So she really did try her best, and she did show me a lot of love growing up.
Yeah, and obviously that's something that and there's other people that could speak to this beyond me, but I mean, the idea of the family cycle of alcoholism is also something that's very difficult. And again, going back to that, being curious about it and trying to understand the why behind everybody's story. So you were faced with a lot of these challenges at a young age, being put on, I guess, legal medication.
Yeah.
And then tell me a little bit about what happened at school too, because I know you've shared before. There's also, I guess, judgment was happening at school too. So
Yeah, for sure. So around the age of, I'm going to say grade 5, grade 6, so around 8 years old, I went to a lot of birthday parties with my friends. And as I progressively got worse with my anger and just being out of control, it got to a point where I was excluded from people's homes. Everyone would get invited to go to the party, and I would ask to go to the party. And my friends would say, my mom doesn't feel comfortable with you being in our house, or, we don't want you to cause a scene and stuff. And so I was bullied a lot. I was called pill boy. I put my trust in my cousin. I told him, hey, like, I'm starting medication, I'm nervous, and he went and told the whole school, and everyone called me pill boy. I was beaten up a lot as a kid. I was really, really skinny. The medication that I was on, I was only eating one meal a day if I was lucky. And I was playing sports too. I was a really good baseball player. I played travel baseball growing up. And but when it comes to like the school aspect, I really struggled academically. I didn't learn how to read or write until I was 11 years old. Fluently, like physically good reading and stuff, because my writing was not good. I wasn't focused on academics. I was more worried about, you know, not getting in trouble and being seen as like a normal kid growing up, right? Because that's all I wanted to be. I wanted to be like my friends who had a dad in their life, or who had, the love and support at home that I wish I had from my dad, right? So it was really hard to see um, children my age being treated better than I was, because I was locked into a lot of rooms as a kid. I remember one time I was walking to go grab a drink of water from the fountain, and I got kicked, and I tripped and fell, and a teacher came up to me and said, hey, like, are you misbehaving again? And I told her what happened, and she said she didn't believe me, and they locked me into a dark room for 2 hours because they felt like I was a threat to other kids. And as I said earlier, I wasn't allowed to go to Muskoka, my Muskoka trip for my grade 8 graduation. I was also excluded from going to Quebec because, again, I was deemed unsafe and unfit to go to a field trip. And, there was something about standing on, at my school property, watching all my friends get on the bus, going to Muskoka, that really hurt me. And I cried. It was the first time I've cried in a long time. And I felt like, what is wrong with me? Like, what am I doing wrong? And I judged myself a lot too. I thought everything was my fault. The reason why my dad left me was because of that. The reason why my mom is struggling is because of me, right? So I put a lot of weight on my shoulders at such a young age.
So, for anybody listening now, maybe if there is a youth or a parent, and I know we're going to talk about this again throughout the show, but is there anything that you might, recommend of how things could be different? And as you're doing that, I'm just going to type in, I want to put the number for the Youth Hub, so that anybody that's watching could also call, because we want to make sure that, part of talking about this is that we know that there now is maybe places for youth to call it. And I believe parents or educators can also reach out to Youth Hub and get some more information. So I'm going to put that number up. So it's 519-800-8640. And that's Youth Hub Windsor, Essex. Let me just put this up while you're talking.
Yeah. So
Okay.
My message to the parents is to just, no matter what, if your child is struggling, just love and support them as much as you can, even though it's really, really hard. I promise you that child will grow up and they will never forget it. Like for me, my grandparents were my biggest angels. They showed no embarrassment to come and pick me up from school, picking me up from jail, picking me up from the hospital. They were always there to greet me with a smile. And my grandma, she always called me her angel. No matter what I did, like I could get in trouble for literally anything. And my grandma, she would come pick me up and she would be like, okay, like you're safe. I always felt safe with my grandma. And still to this day, she is 78 years old. She is kicking butt still to this day, and she kicks my butt every single day. And same with my grandpa. They are both like my role models and people that I never forgot. Like as 6 years old, they always loved me. through no matter what I did. They always loved me and they were there for me anytime I needed them.
When you were going through all this with the kids, did you feel there was anywhere else to go to or turn to, or?
No, I went through, oh man, I went through a good handful of counselors growing up. The first counselor I seen was 7 or 8 at the school that offered it to me. And my memory isn't the best because we're going far back as 15
Mhm.
years, but I do remember, not feeling supported. Like I didn't know any better, right? Like I would get frustrated a lot. I didn't know how to regulate my emotions. And instead of them asking me like, hey, like what's going on? They were more so just like, here, take some medication, and there was no follow-up. I didn't feel comfortable talking to the counselors, especially being 6, 7 years old. I didn't want to talk to many counselors because to me they were strangers. I never felt comfortable enough sharing with them what was going on inside me because I had a lot of pain growing up, right?
So, you mentioned a couple of things, people picking you up from various places, including jail. So, maybe tell a little bit about that journey. And so, you started with, various types of drugs, then alcohol. So how did alcohol come into the picture, and what role were you mixing then, or what was?
Yeah, so I started really partying when I was about 15, 16 years old. That's when I felt like, so I started partying. I got caught with some drugs at school. And instead of being charged, they sent me to Brentwood. Now, I have been familiar with Brentwood. As I mentioned earlier, my entire family is part of Brentwood, right? And so I walked into a rehab center. I was 16 years old. I was the only youth on program, right? So I get thrown into this program, bunch of adults, and I was scared, obviously. And I didn't think I had a problem. I'm 16 years old. I'm just partying. I'm just here for a good time. And I remember a lot of people in there, a lot of counselors in there, they said, like, this isn't what a normal person does. Like normal people, they can drink once or twice a week, whatever. But I was 16 years old and I would drink every single day. Like I couldn't stop myself. It was way out of control. And so my mom drove me to Brownwood, right? So that I wouldn't go to jail. And I just didn't listen to anyone. I thought, I'm going to get out and I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. And when I got out, it got a lot worse. That's when my mom and we were fighting every day because of my own doing. And we had to part ways. She kicked me out of the house and she said, it's either you get help or you go onto the streets. And I said to her, I said, I'm going to take the streets. And so I walked personally from Amherstburg all the way to Windsor just so I can get my fix and so I can meet up with my friends and do my thing. And I'll tell you, I still have blisters probably still to this day from how far I walked. And I remember getting a text from my mom because she asked where I was. She was still kept in contact with me when I was homeless. And she said, how are you doing? Where are you? And I said, well, I'm in Windsor. And I said, my feet are really sore. Can I come home? And she said, nope. Have you learned your lesson? She said, I will only drive you to Brentwood. And so I was homeless for a little bit. And what happened to me, leading me to getting arrested, was I broke into my mom's home and I stole some money from her. And she found out, she called me out on it, and I lied to her. And the police showed up, they arrested me, and they took me in the holding cell. They told me all the charges that I was faced with. And they asked if my mom wants to press charges. And thank goodness that my mom said no. And she just wanted me to get help. But instead, she put a restraining order on me. And so that is when it was another stepping stone. I was like, hey, like Shayne, like there's got to be something wrong with this. Your mom doesn't want anything to do with you. And I took that really hard. I held a lot of resentments towards my mom. I said, how can you do this to me? And but honestly, it was the best thing that she could have ever done because being on the streets for 2, 3 months, at 17 years old, you learn a lot, right? and the judgment that I faced from a lot of people. I was sleeping on park benches, and I had people come up to me and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, you should be getting a job. You should be going to school." And now I forgot to mention, at that point I was already kicked out of my high school. I was expelled. And I remember going to their food bank to so I could grab food, and but sleeping on a park bench, watching families play together and stuff, that's when it opened my eyes to, like, hey, like, I something's going on here, so my heart is hurting and I don't know how to express it. Seeing dads play with their children, seeing mothers how they are with their children, just like a good family ad dynamic really made me hurt inside.
Whew.
Yeah.
Wow, Shayne, I've heard we've talked through some of these things, but wow, that is, I'm sure part of, us talking about this too, is that for people, maybe when they see someone or a youth, right, to understand what may be behind the surface, not everybody is, probably comes from, everybody often makes these assumptions that the parents don't care, but it sounded like your mom really cared, really loved you. And talk about, that to me sounds like a headline for tough love that she,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I'm sure it was one of the hardest things my mom ever had to do, was say no to her son. I couldn't, obviously, I will never know what it's like to be a mother. But I'm sure it was not an easy decision for my mom to say, "Hey, I don't want you around my house. You are scaring me. I don't feel safe with you in my house." Because that's basically what it came down to. It got to the point where I was so bad, I was out of control, and I resented my mom. I was really angry with my mom. I blamed her for the divorce, and but trying to communicate that was something that I really struggled with, and all I knew was anger. That's all I expressed. Rarely was I ever happy. Actually, sorry, the only time I was really happy was when I was playing sports. That was my coping strategy growing up, and it got to a point where depression, anxiety, a bunch of other mental health illnesses took me out of the sport because I didn't think I was good enough. So at 16, I quit everything and I just started, doing drugs and using. And I turned down a lot of sports opportunities to pursue my want to be tough guy phase, right? So I had other plans in my life.
So now, so you were expelled from school at what age, and what was
So
going on?
so I'm gonna be open and honest. I wasn't necessarily picked on in high school, but I felt judged a lot. Like, I had a lot of battles going on inside my head that I felt not welcomed. Now, I may mention this: before I got expelled, my principal really tried his best to, like, I got suspended 15 times before they finally said, "Hey, like, enough is enough." Now, what happened? I got caught with a weapon at school. I had, a lot of angry thoughts going through my head, and luckily I got caught. One of my friends actually called the police, and I was met by, I think, two or three officers into an office, and yeah, I will never forget that day. And then again, I was arrested, and again, instead of putting me in jail, they felt rehabilitation was the best option for me. And again, I didn't want to give up. I was 17 years old. I was told I had to complete a program. I forget what the name of the program now, but you go through this program, you graduate, and then you are allowed back into, like, normal high schools that we see in Windsor, Essex. Now, the waiting list for that was 3 months, and I had no desire to wait 3 months to get my education, because at that point I didn't care about school. I thought, you know what, I don't need school. I could sell drugs. I can do all these things to get my own money. And I quickly learned that, I was not going to make it out there, because there's always someone tougher out there. There's always someone that wants what you have. And in those 3 months, like I said, I ended up overdosing, and my principal was the one that did CPR on me. This was just the day before I got expelled. I wasn't allowed on property. I showed up. I was using with some buddies and I overdosed, and my principal did CPR on me. My mom got called to the school and she visited me, and I woke up 3 days later in my bed, and I have no memory of anything. I just know from when the moment I woke up on the floor, I seen my mom staring down at her child and she was just bawling her eyes out. And you would think at that point that would be my turning point to being like, hey, like there's a problem, but there wasn't. And I kept using. Literally the next day I got released from the hospital, I picked up right away. And that led to a lot of other things. And like I said, I was homeless, and I finally got the help that I needed. That was the turning point for me.
So the turning point being that when you overdosed, is that
it was another step
another
into
step? Yeah.
So my turnaround. So I again, I was homeless. I was sleeping at a Tim Hortons, and me and my buddy, we were there, and we both actually got kicked out of the house the same day, which was kind of funny. And so we slept at a Tim Hortons for a couple nights. And I woke up. I got a tap on my shoulder from the worker. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and she told us that we had to leave. And so my buddy left. I stayed behind, and she approached me and she said, "Hey, like, what's going on?" And I explained to her my situation. I said, I've been to Brentwood 5 times in 2 years. I said, my mom kicked me out of the house. I'm currently homeless. And, I said, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten in 2 days. And I'll never forget. I'll never forget this. She took out her tip jar money and she poured it on the counter, and she bought me a bacon English muffin. I will never forget it. And she told me, she said, I think you need, this is what she said to me. She's like, I think you know what you need to do. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, this is the time for me to get help. I was 17. It was a week before my birthday. And I walked to my grandma's house. It was about an hour and a half walk. And I knocked on the door. I was greeted by my grandma. She was crying. She was so happy to see me. Now, mind you, I haven't had any communication with my family in over 6 months at this point. So I had no cell phone. My family has not heard anything from me. And so my grandma, again, she opened up her home to me. She hugged me, she gave me a kiss, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I can chill here for a couple weeks and, like, just do my time. And she gave me a day to, sleep, to get me back to health. She fed me. And then the next day I was cutting the grass. I was planting flowers. I was gardening, and she put me to work for about 2 weeks. And she's so cute. And then she ended up driving me to Brentwood, and then I graduated, and the rest is history. So that was the real turning point for me to get help. Right there was definitely my grandma and the woman from Tim Hortons. I will never forget her. Yeah.
That Tim Hortons story also just gets me started to tear up, because that is wow. And now, so is this like a 24-hour Tim Hortons? You're just like,
Honestly, I still don't know how I didn't get kicked out in the middle of the night, but I was fortunate enough that lady, she's definitely my angel, because without her, I would not have gotten help. Like, at that point, I was convinced that I had no future, that I was just going to be sad my entire life, and if the drugs weren't going to kill me, someone else would have. That's kind of where I was at in my life. So she was definitely an angel for me, 100%.
So you mentioned angel, and I know we had a brief discussion about this, but do you want to, and you said you were fine talking about this, do you want to talk about role of faith in your life?
Yeah. So for me, I grew up Catholic. I will be the first to tell you, I did not like going to church. Growing up, I absolutely, I would say hate it. I would roll my eyes. I would fall asleep. And my mom every Sunday would still drive me to church, even though I tried my hardest to make her to keep me home. And it wasn't until I went to Brentwood for the 6th and final time. I was about 8 weeks into my 12-week program. And, one of the counselors, they said, if you get on your knees and you pray and you ask for help, you know, like all these wonderful things will happen to you. And I told him, I was like, bro, there's no way. I said, if I get on my knees, I said, I'll probably end up in flames because of all the stuff I've done. Right. And I remember I got on my knees for the first time since I was like 10 years old. So I was 18. I got on my knees and I asked God, I said, hey, God, like, I remember looking up, you know, and I was praying and I said, hey, God, like, just give me a sign that I'm going to be okay. And I kid you not, I get done my prayer and I look up and in the corner of my room, I seen an angel flying over my room. And it's something that I will never forget in my life. And then from then that flipped the switch on me. And I was like, okay, like there is someone looking after me. And I didn't believe it was Jesus at first because I was just like, okay, like let's just get through one thing at a time, right? I didn't want to go into the full blown, like, oh man, I'm going to go to church every day of my life, right? But it was like, I felt like there was someone watching over me. And from that point on, my faith grew, and now I attend church. I'm Eucharistic minister for my church because I truly believe I am very faith based, and I don't preach it to everyone. I just tell them my experience on why I became, because I truly believe we're all brothers and sisters. Where I believe a lot of us are fighting battles that we don't know about. I could be driving and I could see someone having a bad day and I could be like, hey, I wonder what's going on in their head. Every time I go out, whether it be the grocery store, whether it be my work, I make it a point to talk to one stranger, just one stranger, whether it's the cashier, someone that I'm in the checkout lane with, and I commit myself to doing that because I truly believe like that's what my higher power wants me to do. He wants me to show love to other people. That's truly what I believe in.
Well, I love that story. And in all the times we've talked, yeah, I mean, it's not definitely not something you've preached about or so. I mean, it was,
No.
we had a sidebar discussion with that and you said you were okay to talk about, because I think it's important that, you know, also it's how we live our lives, right? Every day, right? Not necessarily. And I often say it's what you do, not what you say as well. And
100%.
the story of the woman in the Tim Hortons, I think that is that just says so much, because a lot of times, you know, you could have someone could have kicked you out, could have said
Yeah.
something negative, and you had someone, not only did she let you sleep there, but she emptied her tip jar, she fed you. And yeah, that is, you know, when we talk about, you know, being curious, and there's, I don't know if you've watched the show Ted Lasso, but the show is all centered around, you know, being curious, believing in people, giving people opportunities, and also not being judgmental. And so your story definitely is fits into that Ted Lasso theme. I think that you are, you had many people that around you, including, I mean, your grandma sounds like what a rock star.
Oh, she's still, like I said, she's still kicking it at 78. She has no problems telling me what to do. It's funny you mentioned that because you know, in a couple of days, I'm sure I bring 10 cases of water to her whenever she calls me, and me and her, we walk into Walmart and I load up 10 cases of water, and she still puts me to work. Still to this day, we've been doing this for years. So yeah, I still never forget.
You owe her.
Oh yeah, no, I do. I owe her more than just a case of water. That's 100% sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think was what made it, for anybody listening, another youth, or what do you think was the, I mean, we talked about, I guess, other people in your life. What is it that for you that was probably most important if we were giving some advice? And I do want to say, for anybody listening, we do have we have someone from Canadian Mental Health Association that will be coming on the show shortly. And a couple of times you may have seen me put up the youth hub for Windsor, Essex, because Canadian Mental Health Association locally oversees kind of the running, well, yeah, along with many other organizations here in Windsor, Essex. And so Kim Willis will also give a little more context about the youth hub, because I'll just say this now, the youth hub has no waiting list. It's free. You don't need a referral, and it's for age 12 to 25. So so let's talk about, and we'll get, when Kim comes on, we can have a little discussion about the youth hub. But for what you went through, and you were at 6 times at Brentwood, what what was what do you think was the thing within you that helped you get on track?
The thing with me is there's a such thing as rock bottom, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term, but
Yeah.
it gets to a point where you've run out of options. Like I've tried everything. I went to AA. I went to youth diversion. I went to New Beginnings. I went to Turning Point. I went to John Howard Society. I went to all of these wonderful organizations. Don't get me wrong, but the thing with me is you got to really truly find it in yourself to want to change until you get to that point, whether it's someone talking to you about it. For me, it was listening to other people's stories that, hey, look at what this person went through, and look at how they live their life today. Like, how can that person go through abuse for their entire life and still sit up here with a smile on their face? That was where the people that really I looked up to as mentors, right? Because like I said, I've had a lot of stuff happen to me throughout my childhood, and I didn't think I'd ever get through and be happy. And I think just sticking with the positive people is what did it to me. It was mainly, I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for the army that I have by my side today, 100%.
Wow. Army by your side. Yeah. And all of those only maybe a few of them or a couple of them weren't very youth focused either as well. What do you think? I know parents struggle with this. I'm sure your mom did, although I want to say a shout out because I think your mom is listening. Mom, you have done a remarkable job with this young man because look at where he's at now and telling his story. And I have to say, that's really amazing too, that your family, supports you sharing this story because sometimes that can be difficult, right? And that's what we often talk about in mental health is ending the stigma of talking about this, right? Because, if you had cancer, if you had any other disease, it would be fine to talk about it. But when it comes to mental health and addictions, sometimes that can be families feel reluctant to share that. So, what tips might you give to other adults as they're looking, whether a teacher, a parent?
Again, the biggest thing for me is the love and support. When I work for the school board, I make it my point to, be open to the children that I work with because they are leaving a potentially toxic environment. And if your child is struggling with, being bullied at school, make your home, a safe place for them to talk to about it. If a child is coming up to you and they're crying and they're upset and they're saying, hey, I'm being picked on, this is what's going on, I guess the biggest thing is listening, keeping a practice active listening and making sure that you're paying attention to the potential warning signs that there may be something going on at school that you may not have any clue about. That's what I think the biggest thing is, making sure that you have yourself a safe place for your child to go to.
And just before we bring Kim on, I know you once shared a story because I think a lot of people don't realize how young some things can start and how, awareness around. Can you share the story of that young girl? I see she was
Yes. So I, like I said,
so how old would she be? She'd be what?
grade three. So
8?
So about 7, 8 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I mentioned, I work for the school board. It's something that I'm really passionate about, is helping children. And she approached me and she said, "Hey, sir, have you ever done a bump?" Now, a bump, for those that don't know, is basically when you're doing a line of cocaine, right? And so when she said that to me, I was like, "Oh, what do you mean? Like, you got a bump on your arm? Did you bump yourself?" And she literally said the exact words to me, "No, cocaine." And it blew my mind. I was like, here, this grade 3 is already knowing about drug terms that most adults don't even know about. And it just makes you question, like, what is really going on with our children these days? What are they exposed to, right? So
Right.
yeah, it really blew me away. It really did when that person approached me, for sure.
Well, I just want to say this, and to you and the school board and to all of the future employer of yours, that I mean, you are definitely someone that's needed in this world to know how to interpret that, because many adults probably wouldn't
Yeah.
even know what that is. Including me. I don't know what that was. So until you told me. So on that note, let's bring in Kim, because I think now's a good time to have a little bit of discussion. We'll talk about the youth hub, and let's just bring in Kim. Hello, Kim, and welcome. Kim,
Hi,
thank
thank you for having me.
Kim's been in the green room, waiting, joining, and maybe Michelle, who is the operations director at the youth hub, is about to give birth. I guess we
Right, yes,
not
tomorrow.
not a secret.
Tomorrow. Yeah, we're hoping tomorrow. We have exciting news, but yeah, Michelle Rocheleau is the operations manager at the Youth Wellness Hub, and has been really instrumental in bringing us to where we are today.
So let's jump into, based on, and I know you've heard some of Shayne's story, but I think not. You probably learned some more from today, just like myself. Every time I talk to Shayne, there's other pieces of the puzzle. So one of the things he talked about a 3-month waiting list, being at Brentwood. So Youth Hub, for also those that aren't aware, is been open just over a year at a temporary location, and it's moving to permanent location likely in July.
Yes. I was just actually at the new site. So yes, we are moving there at the beginning of July at 215 Eugenie Ave, Unit 106. And yeah, so the Youth Wellness Hub is a provincial model that the government has endorsed, and it's actually taking shape across Canada and probably North America for that matter, which is youth and families have told us that navigation of the mental health system is onerous and difficult, and wait times, whether you are looking for mental health or addiction support, you often will go to some of these really wonderful agencies, but are faced with lengthy wait times. I've heard right now, for example, Maryville, which is a children and youth mental health center in Windsor, has about 400 people on their wait list. So the beautiful thing about the Youth Wellness Hub is that it's a mix of providers who operate under one roof in a youth-friendly setting. So I think all those pieces make it really special. You don't need an appointment. And if you're between the ages of 12 and 25, you can come in any day. Our particular hub is open 1 till 7, and see someone right away. And if that's not the right place for you, or they think based on your assessment or what you share that there's somewhere else that you should go for additional supports, it's a warm handoff. It's someone walking with you along that journey, that path, that makes sure we do our best so that you don't slip through those cracks. So in our case, we have really great partners that include, in addition to the CMHA, Maryville, as I mentioned, Hotel Dieu Grace Healthcare and the Regional Children's Center, New Beginnings, there's the Bridge, the Windsor Essex Community Health Center, and the teen health team there, the Inn of Windsor, we have United Way, and then a variety of other providers that come in to do different pieces around programming. But it's also unique in that there's a youth advisory council that inform all of the decisions that are made to inform what the youth hub looks like, any things they think should be incorporated when it comes to programming, and just insights. Just for example, we've had to make a lot of decisions as it relates to this new site. And the youth were, first of all, instrumental in selecting that location. So that was one of the first big tasks they faced, was identifying where would be the best place to have this main hub. And so ultimately, we're at Eugenie, so right in a corridor that's near some schools and traffic ways and parks and such. But they've also been really helpful in the equity piece, in how can we make the youth hub attractive to individuals from, every ethnic background, every, just various walks of life. But interestingly, one of the decisions, just, it sounds simple enough, is someone from the facilities team here said, hey, do we want to put those Dyson hand dryers in the washroom? And I thought, makes sense to me. Like, I'm thinking it's Dyson. They're, a major brand, very innovative. It's environmentally friendly, which I know is important to this group. And interestingly enough, it was a hard no because of the noise and some sensitivities around that. So yeah, I think it's just really awesome that, to have that youth voice as part of this. So
Well, and thank you, Kim, for that, because, you're right. A lot of the decisions that what we may think they want, and, as a parent of a now former teen, but he's now 20. Yeah, I learn a lot when I listen, ask questions, and further what you said, Shayne. One of the things I've tried to do is say things like, just listen and don't give advice. Sometimes I don't have to tell them. And Shayne, can you maybe you said something earlier about like what sometimes, the don't do this, don't do that. What does that work? Like, don't do drugs.
No. So children nowadays, they need an alternative, right? It's one thing to tell them drugs aren't bad, but maybe tell them, hey, like going out with your friends, like have a good time, go out for a bike ride, go for a walk, go play basketball, go play baseball. Don't just tell them, because we all know drugs are bad. Like there's not one person that knows that drugs are good for them, right? Especially the harder drugs, right? And so giving them an alternative is something that is proven to be very successful.
And what about now, because you spent time at the youth hub, and I know Kim will talk a little bit about that, is that one of the things that in my learning also about as I've come in to work in the area of mental health, more from a marketing and, support role, is that a lot of the prevention and education and outreach, all the prevention type things comes from fundraising and not, I mean, the government funds go for once people are in treatment. So how has the youth hub for you, Shayne, been in terms of, and then Kim will talk about why we need to do more.
Well, I think the biggest thing is just that first step of admitting I have a problem. That is probably by far one of the hardest. I guess you can call it a decision within yourself that's saying like, hey, like there's something up. Just being able to walk into a room and feel comfortable, such as the Youth Wellness Hub. There's non-judgmental staff. You're greeted with a nice intake worker, nice peer support worker, and they will guide you through the step by step, because it is a grueling process. You have to share all your information. And one of the biggest things I love about the Youth Wellness Hub is you share your story once with them and they don't ask you to talk about it again. That I think is one of the biggest things. Because my personal experience, I went through various organizations. I had to repeat the trauma over and over again, and I had to relive it again and again. Whereas the Youth Wellness Hub, you share it once and they know what to do with it right away because they're so well educated.
And maybe Kim can speak more to this, but I know they have the peer support workers, which is a really interesting approach. And unfortunately, their one peer support worker that was going to come on today, she's actually doing some advocacy work. So obviously that is a priority. And I appreciate that that was a priority, that she's working away, helping other youth. And I just want to say personally, the reason I'm very supportive beyond the work I'm doing with Canadian Mental Health Association is that supporting something like the Youth Hub, because it's so needed in terms of prevention and getting ahead of the curve. So Kim, can you maybe talk about that, about the need for like how that works in terms of some of the maybe sponsors and why you're working away at trying to increase support for this?
yeah, well, I think just the prevalence of mental health is so rampant, and we knew it was particularly an issue for youth prior to 2020. And then once the pandemic unfolded, it's exacerbated those issues. So we know there's so many factors: increased social media, the like peer pressure, just the lack of hope in the world today with all the various things happening. It's tough for our young people, and they're our future generation. So we want them to be healthy, thriving members of our communities, who support our local economies, can take on some of these job vacancies. and such. And we don't, the worst thing is someone is finally ready to look for treatment and go and have to, face wait times. So, we established our hub, and it's a big step when we'll get our permanent location. And we've launched a $5 million fundraising campaign to support that work. So yes, as you mentioned, the government does support. We're very grateful for that support, but the bulk of those funds go to supporting staff salaries, which is, the bread and butter of what we're doing. However, we need, a space to operate. We need support to deliver these evidence-based programs. And ultimately, we know that it's Windsor and Essex County, and that for many youth, transportation can be a barrier. So our dream and our long-term plan is to develop some satellite locations in the county. And we've started to do some of that work in Leamington and Amherstburg a couple afternoons a week. We know it's not enough, but it's a start. So as part of a fundraising campaign, that's the goal is, as we can raise those dollars, we can expand our scope and our reach to youth in the county as well. But I think just having that immediate access to supports is so important. And, being in this work, I get asked all the time, where can I send a friend or a family member to? And my first question now is, are they between the ages of 12 and 25? Because I know that I can refer them to the Youth Wellness Hub, and it will be a good experience, and they will access service and care right away. So it's becoming now more challenging on the adult side to find places to direct to where they won't have those wait times.
And that will maybe be a show for another day where we will talk about the after age 25. And for anyone listening, now's the time to, I'll give a little plug for the upcoming Ride Don't Hide, which is open to all ages. And this is a ride to end stigma about mental health. And it's going to be June 25th. And we'll put some information. You'll be seeing lots of information on my social media, probably on Kim's and Canadian Mental Health locally as well too. And you can sign up. You can do a 10 kilometer, 20, 50, or 100 kilometer, or you can just show up and there's a great after party.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be bigger and better this year. I mean, every year we try to raise the bar, but I know there'll be some characters and lots of activities for kids. And Bird Canada is actually going to be on site, so with their scooters. So if you've been wanting to try that out, that'll be fun. So yeah, we start and end at the Children's Aid Society parking lot on Riverside Drive in Windsor.
Okay, so that's good. And that's another way, again, for raising funds for mental health in our community. The funds stay local. Same thing with the Youth Hub of Windsor, Essex. So just before we wrap up, I do want to say, anybody that wants to, get in touch with Kim, there'll be, Kim, if you could maybe after to drop a comment in, especially on LinkedIn, or and people can find you through the various channels with Canadian Mental Health Association here in Windsor, Essex. And make sure if you have any questions, please reach out to Kim, or if you want to support, there is still some room namings at the Youth Hub. So lots of great opportunities for businesses, anyone listening. And something from what you said, Kim, and in the world I work in, which is in manufacturing, often, there's a great need to find more employees. And I was at a conference where they were talking about percentage of people with disabilities that are unemployed, and it's like 76%. And then the other category is that, where that sometimes people, based on their background, if they do have a criminal record, often they're set aside. And I think, Shayne, you're a good poster child for this, even with your background. Luckily, I guess your mom didn't press charges back in. But if she have, a lot of times, again, where you were at 12, 15, 16 is not where you are now. And I guess back to for anybody tuning in now, you are now, exemplary student. You're working with the school board. You're going to college, planning to go on to university. And And for anyone else that's listening, I do want to encourage, if you choose not to go post-secondary, there is also apprenticeships available in the manufacturing world. And, you know, there's lots of skilled trades opportunities as well. So, so anything, just as we're wrapping up, Shayne, anything that we haven't talked about or that we've missed that you want to say to anybody?
I guess the biggest thing is I just want to say, like, what Kim mentioned about, you know, the hope, right? Because like I said, I work with a lot of children, and one of the things that breaks my heart is the children. They always say, what's the point of wanting a future if we're just gonna all die one day? You know, and the biggest thing that I tell them is, you know, I lived, like, me personally right now, I do it for my grandparents, right? I also do it for myself, but who knows how long they have left on this earth. I want them to remember me as like a good person, a good human being. And so what I tell those children are, you know, if you don't have any parents, I said, do it for yourself, do it for your friend, you know, do it for your sport that you're in, the extra activities that you're in, you know, because there is a lot more to life than just, you know, mental health. Like, there's a whole other side of it once you, I guess, get to that point where you're not letting your mental health affect you, right? As much as it was, because for some people, just getting out of bed is a challenge. And if you got out of bed today, then, you know, pat yourself on the back, because I I can advocate for that, because there's times that I didn't want to get up and do certain things, but once I did, I felt 100 times better now that I accomplished something.
Wow. I do want to, as a guest, I always ask, so I want to make sure we have time for this. How do you exercise your curious mind, Shayne?
What I do is I play basketball. I go for walks. I listen to my music. I blast a lot of non-gospel music, but you know, I get my music. I also like to spend time with my family, because family is really important to me. That's how I do it.
Well, Shayne, thank you. Thank you to your family that's listening. And if that woman from Tim Hortons or the principal is listening, I mean, there's a lot of people didn't give up on you. And I think many people are very grateful for that you were able here to tell your story and continue to now help and share other youth. And just a quick wrap up, Kim, anything you want to add before?
Yeah, just, you know, I just want to commend Shayne again for sharing his story. And I mean, that's really brave. And I know it impacts so many. And also just you know, when we set out to establish the Youth Wellness Hub in Windsor, we said, you know, if we can impact just a few lives, it's all worthwhile. And since we opened, we've had over 400 youth visit on numerous visits. They come back. So, you know, I think that speaks to the need. And, you know, I know that we're helping people, and we're going to help a lot more.
And there's the website. So I encourage people to go check it out and get in touch with Kim if you'd like to help out in any way. There are many ways to step up to help out. So I want to thank you both for coming out. Shayne, thank you for being part of Curious Minds with GailNow. My show is something where I try to, you know, really look at how curiosity can help change the world and show us all that there is great hope. So I want to thank you for that. So I'm going to have you both just go in the green room, and I'll be there shortly.
Thank you.
You can enjoy the refreshments in the green room. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank people that may be watching this on replay. You know, curiosity is such a valuable part of everything we do. And both Kim and Shayne talked about hope and how we need to, brought you back in. And when we go live, that's what happens. Hit a wrong button. So, you know, the importance of hope as well. And that there are many great stories in our world. And there's also different ways to look at every situation. And sometimes the way only through our lens and through our one-dimensional view is sometimes limited. So I hope as you maybe review some of my other shows or join in other shows, you will bring with that idea of having maybe an open mind, a curious mind, because as I say, there are many, many great stories, and we need to all tell and share them. So hope to see you all next on my next Curious Mind show. I have some great guests coming up. So please subscribe to my channel, and you can also get notified for when I go live next or when there's new videos that are posted. So have a great day or evening, wherever you're at. And I'll see you soon on Curious Minds with GailNow.